Oh my goodness. I can't believe it. I forgot me. Yo, 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 yo. My goodness. We have got a guest in the house. It's only Hall of Famer, the legend that is Ian Laker. What's happening, Lakes? Good to see you.
Good to see you guys. I was
Johnny?
just saying, he was near me yesterday at hospital. He's only about 20 minutes away from me.
Yeah, but he's scared of hospitals. That's the thing, Lakers. You know what I mean?
I
Like,
don't.
they thought he's going to
Well, that's
chop him
my
up.
hospital now.
Yeah. Johnny, how you doing, lad?
I thought Southport would have been closer for you.
No, because Walton's got a spinal bifid specialist section, so I'm just signed for that now because I'm not. It's a spinal unit at Southport.
Well,
Yes, spinal unit.
it's
Southport.
great to have you here, Laker, even though we've just spent like 40 minutes trying to get you on, but never mind that. It's absolutely great to have a Hall of Fame legend like you. And all we're going to do is just chat. Just boys chat. We're going to have some fun as well. So, Laker, tell me where it all started for you. Where did it all start? Where did the game start for you?
I was at a specialist boarding school which existed in them days called Lord Mayor Trelaw College, which is in Hampshire, and they had a basketball team. Well, we did handball and basketball, and we used to go to the junior games. And at the junior games, we won that championship for many years against Morris Hamilton and his team. I think were called. Oh, I'm trying to remember that. He might remember Thacker or something like that. We always up against it. He was back then, 10 days later. But yeah, so I started about the age of 12, actually.
What year was that, Laker?
1972.
Yeah,
Would
wow.
have, 71 would
1970.
have been my first juniors. 1971 would have been my first juniors.
I know the Lord Deartremore College because they were always the kings of the junior basketball nationals. It took us
Yeah.
years. It took us years to overcome you, the fellas, because you always. It looked like you always practice day in, day out.
Well, we had our own sports halls at both ends, and we had like quite a mix of disabilities, so it gave us some advantage. I coached our junior Trelaw's teams years later after I left as well, and we won that. And we had some hemophiliacs in there and people like that. With do you know hemophiliacs got the they're all in the news at the moment. But so we had
Yeah.
well, so that gave us a tremendous advantage, always having like a tool at least, you know.
So why
You know what I
bas-
was doing in 1972? I was swimming inside my dad.
Yeah, your dad should have gave up swimming. To be fair,
Uh, some things you just can't stop.
stop. You
Nature.
can't stop, lad. Tell him he should have wore his wellies. That's what he should have done. Should have put some Wellington boots on. Hey, so how did you get into How did you come with the love of basketball? Because
Well, to be honest, I was always good at sport, despite my shape nowadays. But back then, I was a swimmer. I was actually a better swimmer, and I had medals in the race. I was a swimmer and races. I won medals for both. I even held a 100-meter record for many years on the dash. But this is before racing chairs and stuff like that. And could have been a GB swimmer before I was a GB basketball player. I even thought about it, but I just didn't like swimming competitions. They're boring. You're sitting around, you just get dry, and then you have to get wet again. So it's tedious. But I love basketball. It just gripped me, we won, and then I left Trelawn's and I went to a college in Chichester. And a friend of mine was 2 years younger than Trelawn's. He joined SPAC Jets, who became Jets, and he said, "Oh, come and join us." And this was about a year after I'd left Trelawn's, so about 1977.
wow.
So I went up there, and then I got invited to a GP thing within months. It was, and we were using a made-up chair. I had a borrowed piece of old heavy-duty chrome chair which we bolted together, and I used that, and I got selected somehow.
Wow. Wow. So well, your first one was right 79, around about 79.
Yeah, so I got. Yeah, we went. There's a under 21 squad, and there's a group of people, many of whom you know. There was there. So yeah, I don't know how I got selected in the chair I was, but I then got sponsored for a chair from the company I was training as an accountant with. So it all worked out.
So what was your feeling your first time selected for Great Britain? I know it's under 21 level, but your first, that feeling of getting selected. Did you ever think it would
Yeah,
happen?
I don't think it's talked about enough, but I just, it just happened. I wouldn't say I thought it was possible. It was just like, you're in something and it just processes through. But you don't know it till you're in your uniform, in a queue, sat on the court, listening to your national anthem. And that's when I think I felt the most. That's when I felt really alive.
Pretty special. Like we know that special experience of putting on that GB vest for the first time. I'm not sure the kids nowadays understand that feeling of
The value of it.
the value of it, because it looks like they just walk into it. I'm sure you didn't walk into that team. You had to fight your way into that first team.
Well, it was life. Don't you think basketball's a bit like your life anyway? You start everything as a junior, and you're a senior. In basketball, you start as a on the bench position 12 or something, and you work your way up to starting five.
No,
Um,
I
I
was
mean,
never
it's
on the
like with
bench.
Jets. I never kept any of the first division trophies we won. Though Jets were like the champions for years, but I never kept any of the trophies until I was starting five, and we won it.
Wow.
And that
What?
mattered to me.
Why was that? Was when you realised you'd won it?
Yeah, because you need a squad, and I value that now. Years later, I understand it. But at the time, young person, it was like sometimes with Jets, they were a hard team to get on board with. You went on when you were 30 points up, and it didn't matter. They were that dominant. There was only Southport really any competition back then. So it sort of you didn't really feel you were winning the game. Does that make sense?
Yeah. You're just not part of the game.
No. So
I,
for me, it came about getting into that starting five and being valued for what I'd actually brought and did something in the game.
so did you have a plan to get into that starting five? Because obviously you said you won a lot of trophies before that. So what were you, eighth, ninth player, or the 11th or 12th, or like you said, you came on when they were either 30 up or 30 down? Did you have a plan to get you to where you wanted to get to?
I just made sure I trained as much as possible. So I was trained to be an accountant at the same time. And one of the ladies I worked with, her husband was the caretaker of a local school. So he let me in before the school early in the morning, and I used to do literally like 45 minutes to an hour training on my own in a small. It wasn't a big full court, but it was a court with two nets, and I trained like 3 mornings a week before going to work. And then I went, and then I was at weekends. Stoke Jets always trained on Friday afternoon. It was the big scrimmage session, and we scrimmaged. We didn't train. We just scrimmaged and scrimmaged and scrimmaged. And then I went back up on Saturday and went back up on Sunday, and that's how. And I committed to that. And it just, I think just you have to put the practice in. It was that
Yeah,
really.
for sure.
Right.
I think I remember the first time I played you, and they said, "Oh, you're guarding him," and I say, "What? I'm not guarding that little fat kid. No way. I'm not guarding him." Oh my God, you torch me, Blake. Just torch me. You could shoot the shit out of the basketball. That's all I know. And then I thought, you know what? I've got to be able to shoot like that because unbelievable, unbelievable.
Who
I'd
was
say,
the first GB coach that selected you then?
oh, blimey, what was his name? Glyn Taylor?
Glyn
Glyn,
Taylor. I heard
yeah.
about him, Glyn Taylor. Any good as a
Yeah, I mean,
coach?
I don't even vaguely remember what he was like, because it was a blur. It's a long time ago for me.
Yeah, for sure. So you played for the Jets for quite a while. Yeah, you had some good years
Yeah.
there. So
Well,
you played with some great players at that team.
well, they were all legends. I mean, I had Abby
Yeah, another Hall of
Ray
Famer.
Croft,
Another Hall
Chris
of
Roll,
Famer. Yeah,
Neil McDonald, Mick McCready, Steve Roach. We had the Henderson brothers, the Big Bill Hendersons,
Yeah, yeah.
brother Will, and there was a few others there, but those were the main quarters. So it was actually hard to get on court anyway.
Chris Rolt.
Yeah, Chris Roll. I mean, we had great guards. Like Britain had great guards back then. You had like Neil McDonald was a great set shooter,
yeah.
even though he was still getting on at that
Left
point.
hand bank shot. Neil
Um,
McDonald.
yeah, and Chris Roll he was always off the and then you had Ray Cross, who probably I still think one of the most intuitive passers you ever knew. Every time I just remember, every time I wanted the ball, it was there. It's
I,
like,
I I remember watching Ray, and he done something that I've never seen before. I don't know how he done it. So he was just going straight to the basket, and the defender came towards him. So he faked like he was going to go out, and he just a right-handed finger roll, and I couldn't believe
yeah.
it. And that was who I said, right, I've got to be like him. I've got to be able to play like Ray Cross. He was like a genius, and that first his size.
I noticed watching the 1984 games that we put up. What Ray sent in, he had an incredible quick release when he was in the in amongst the giants. When he was in the paint, his release of his shot, it was like Kuhn Jansson's a bit. It was behind his head, but it was so quick. It was.
Well, that's the difference between in the game now that's changed a bit. Because when we were guards, especially as in England, we didn't have that many. We didn't tools, but the tools we struggled with. So you were taught to shoot quickly. You didn't do all this like setting up and faking because everybody could check you out. So we were taught to shoot quickly. I was taught to shoot. I always had a quick shot because
you did have a quick shot.
It was just I found it hard to slow down, but that's what you were taught. You were taught somebody was going to be on you, and they were going to be bigger than you, so you learned to shoot quickly.
So
also as a reaction more than something you thought about. It should be a shot, should be natural, with no thinking, so you don't have pressure, react and shoot. And
well, that's what yours was like, because even if you watch Big 8 games, your shot was, if you got it, it was gone. When you knew you was hot, it was gone. I remember that when you played for Hounslow Hurricane Force.
Yeah.
And you was in the gold 3-wheeler top end.
The one that chair that nearly killed me, yeah.
and Dan Johnson said in a time, he took the time out over John Staten. He said, "Dude, we cannot let him keep going. Get out on him. Just get out on him. Make him put it on the floor." Straight after the timeout, next offense, wallop. It's in again. There was no thought process. You just got it, and I never forget that.
So
I hated checked out though. Absolutely hated being checked.
Because that's why you had a quick release shot. So you had a good few years at the LGS Jets, and then you moved on. Where did you move on to next? And why did you move on?
There wasn't many teams in the country, and I was coming from Sussex, Littlehampton, so it was about nearly a 2-hour drive to go up there. So we'd started a club down there, the first Sussex team ever. So I played at that time. You could do it. I played first half of the year with the Sussex team, and then the second half with Jets. So I was doing that, but then I was getting married, so I moved to Hounslow, and it was actually playing Haringey. I played Haringey with Jets, and you had that Canadian coach, I think.
Yeah, crazy Canadian.
We gave you a bit of a tanking, and I was asked if I would join because I'd been training with you because I was living in London. I was training in different places. So I did. I left Jets and came to Haringey. I thought it just seemed a good thing to do. The Jets had changed by then because we had the split where Jets had got too big, too many good players, and Aces had formed off that.
So let me ask you a question, Laker. So the Jets, you were successful in England. Why weren't you successful in the Euro Cup?
It was the bigs. I mean, we had Bill Henderson was our only real big, and then Dave Walters later. But in reality, we were always up against more than one big, and we struggled to stop the two, very good big. But this is the era of Carlo De Gucci, Carlo from Italy, and Lars Gunnar, and the French had Eric Benoit and stuff, and another Philippe Baillet. They outclassed Bill Henderson by about 200 miles.
I was going to say,
Big Billy.
And Dave Walters was okay, but he was a 2-pointer with poor balance, strapped in like the mummy, trying to mark for an incredibly mobile 4.5.
Yeah, so that was interesting because you dominated obviously Britain, but you couldn't do nothing in Europe. So you came to Haringey. I bet you when you come to Haringey, you remember the floor that we used to train on at New River.
Oh, the carpet at New River. Oh, I hated that. I've hated those carpets ever since as well, especially if you're big like me.
But It did get you fit though, didn't it? We used to get fit. I remember when they said Lakers joined, I said yes. Now we got a shooter on our team. I won't be hunting him. He's on my side now. But the rubber there was always my nightmare. I hated that place. Absolutely
We had
hated it.
some great sessions. There was a good group of us down there, and a regular group of us that train that were like quite now all through the summer. Sometimes
Yeah, yeah.
we'd be 2-on-2 or something on that court,
We
full court 2-on-2.
on that court, didn't we? Like we just say right, train. Who's coming training? And then we just bang, we bang it out for 2 or 3 hours. Just like great, and you stayed at Haringey for quite a while, but then you set up your own little thing over in
Well,
Hounslow.
Haringey, we had a lot of problems in Haringey. I don't know, towards the end, political, getting a bit of in-club fighting. And then Haringey was folding. So Hounslow Hurricanes had started meanwhile, which had been, we'd started over Hounslow. We took over Haringey's fixtures to finish off the season. And then I helped Haringey close down as a charity, unfortunately, and stuff like that.
Yeah, because we all went different ways. I think Tottenham Tigers grew, and then obviously the Hounslow. But you had a big influence on the Hounslow team and the kids over there.
Well, that's I think the legacy I'm most proud of always. I mean,
For sure.
Is the Hounslow legacy the one that became Titans?
Yeah, it became Force, and then we joined with Raiders, who were in West London, because we were fighting each other as like the London derby, but we weren't beating the northern teams at all.
Yeah,
we just
for
weren't
sure.
competing. So we decided to merge. They had the bigs and we had the smalls at that point, so it was just a natural thing. Paul Pearson, who Sinclair knows really well, Paulie was he approached me about it first, bless him, and he and Jasper, I think Jasper was nervous about it, but agreed with it. He couldn't see where else he's going. He was lost where to go with his club anyway, Philippo. So, and Paul just thought together we could do better. And as it happened, and you look at us now, we did. I mean, that club's, I'm just composing a list. It's like nearly 300 players.
Yeah, for sure.
And something like nearly 50 GB have played, who they're not all like full found by us or anything like that, but like 50 people with GB backgrounds of junior and senior women's.
The thing is, Ian, with like Hounslow and that, because there was so many London teams at that time. We had London Hawks, obviously Haringey, Tottenham, and then Leroy started his Sparrows and those things. But Hounslow was kind of the driving force. I always thought when I came to Hounslow, that was the driving force for London, because we split so thin that we needed to have a power base down south after LGS. Obviously, Milton Keynes is a bit further up. And I really enjoyed my time at Hounslow because I thought it was great. We had a great bunch of lads. Great team. Really great team.
What's your memories of when we used to have the Nationals at Stoke?
Well, I think they were. I still think that's the saddest thing in the world that they stopped. Yeah. Because that was the bonding for a lot of us, and on more levels than just basketball.
It wasn't just bonding for me. I think it was where people got role models or mentors.
Well, yeah, that's the problem. Is I think today is that it's almost like the sport got so big in a way that the clubs, the lower level clubs and beginners and rec players, they don't really get a chance to see and play against, like on a real close way, the other people to be role models. There's not enough television coverage, but at the Nationals you would watch loads of it and you would pick up a lot. You can pick up a lot watching.
No, but I picked, like when I go into the Nationals, for me it was, I'm going to see people I've not seen play. I'm going to see the best people, the best players play and see how good I am. You mark yourself to them. I'm also going to meet other people that I haven't met for over the year before, and you're socialising with them. And I think it's a big socialised thing, but the main thing is you were seeing players and aspiring. Look, I want to be as good as they do. Get and the finals. It used to be packed, didn't it? It used to be like an LGS. I remember the biggest one probably was LGS Milton Keynes when that they had their first final. I remember that game. It was like, whoa, wow, what a game that was, and that was the bonding. I think we missed it. I think it's so commercialized. The basketball nowadays is so commercialized, and there's no role models for these young kids to go and see and say, oh yeah, I want to be like him.
They are there, but they're not getting to see them. And you may, as I say, I have friends from that are now from that I gathered that over the years, like they're 45 years I've known them.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous, you know. That's how long. That's what you build a bond. And yeah, you don't need to see anybody. You just see each once a year, but you're still friends. It's just the way it is. Should be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like today, I think they missed that because obviously we had the National Cup at that time as well as the Nationals. We had probably, to me, all the good players in Great Britain were playing here, so you could actually see them and grow up as role model. We had a junior national championships that would run the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all about getting your. This is what I think's missing: the building blocks. I mean, yes, I don't know. If you don't get me started on what they do nowadays, because you know, for me, it seems to be about making sport available for everybody. We seem to be more like a social. We're a social solution, we're like therapists for all sorts of people. So the sport's getting a little bit lost in the good we can do for other people with other problems. It's not necessarily the sport anymore.
Yeah.
How did you come to be on the board?
Well, I started very young. There was very few people wanted to go in the committee back in the old days when it was players. We just very few people volunteered. But as you know, I was brought up to be and I've always organised. I started my first basketball team when I was 18 down in Bognor. I've always run things, and it just was a natural thing, you know. So I was doing a lot with the club. I even sat on the committee at Stoke Mandeville under Ludwig Gutmann himself, you know, Papa Ludwig Gutmann. So, you know, I remember him coming and chairing our meetings and saying hello to us. So I was the junior rep then. So I always done that. And then it seems so natural I went on there in the end. I just like running things. I'm a control freak, some people think. Well,
if you was in control now, what would you change?
Sorry?
If you was in control now, what would you change?
Well, I'd go back to basics. I really would take us back to basics to rebuild the sport for me. They think the sport is just bodies. Does that make sense? It's about numbers. It's not about the quality. It's not about the sport. It's about how many people you have playing it, so you can get more grants get more people playing it. But they're playing at it. A lot of them are playing at it, and I don't want to be rude to them. I want people to play at it, but I think it's just. It is playing at it.
You'll get banned.
Well, that'd be funny, but I'm not a member, so.
So, Laker, what do you mean by basics? Because as it is right now, to us, me and John, as we see it, it's a numbers game. Get as much money in as possible. You know, you got the CEOs and those people. They're not lasting 2 minutes. They come here for like a stepping stone to their next future. The basketball here is just terrible. The league's terrible. What do you mean by going back to basics?
Well, let's understand the nature of what they are now. So essentially, they are representing a government body of every other type of government body you ever want to do. So they're not. You think they're setting the policies? They're not. They're following policy guidelines set by agendas from people higher up in the funding bodies. So the funding bodies like UK Sport and stuff like that, and the government can say, like, we need to get more people. We need to, it's good to have all this, do this and do that. So that's what we will give you funding only to do this. So they then can only do what they have the funding to do. I think the problem is what they truly have to help the clubs is no other fund income, which is the thing we wanted most when we designed our office plan, which Steve Spilker and myself, I wrote basic core and Steve Spilker fluffed it out, but we wanted to make a way of getting ourselves on staff that produce money to help every club develop and be better, so that clubs weren't rattling tins in streets or begging for money and grants. We wanted to be able to have a fund to give the clubs grants to do things properly and help them. And we also, the coaching was originally about teaching them how to teach the game better, but that turned into we've got to have loads of coaches to cover our insurance levels, and so let's get as many ones, twos and qualified so that if there's an injury to a player, the insurance will cover it. And that quality isn't there. They're trained in wow, it's like a basic level, really. It's covers the essentials you need for a modern PC world of being correct, and they're all important things, maybe health, medical, injuries, guidelines for protection of kids, particularly, and adults, abuse, and all that. But
Yeah.
there's very actual little of the sport and how we were taught to do how the best way to pass, to move your chair, to what the purpose of why you move your chair, the purpose of why you do that, what part of the board to shoot on, and how do you, and teaching shooting. Well, I don't think that's taught. I'm not sure that's taught at all, really.
So like
No, because you'll never see anybody with the same shooting technique.
I know, it's just what they just, I don't think anybody really, I've met very few coaches that actually also understand tactics and play. And that's the thing that just I find annoying. I regard myself as a coach. I was what I call a game coach, not a training coach.
Yep.
So reading the game, being able to have half a dozen defensive options and changes, and being able to draw up a play that gets somebody a better shot from the right angle, or pulls the defense apart, all those things, and when to press, when not to press, when to hustle. All those things aren't taught in any way, shape.
So you know what, Ian? I love that answer, because that's exactly what we think. They've got plenty of coaches who are training coaches, but when it comes to game management of teams and coaching game management, it's just a dying art, because you can see it. Because when we looked at the recent GB team that went in Dubai, they had 3 seconds left. They didn't know what to do. And then a couple of months later, they're playing in a tournament, exact same position, 5 seconds left. They got the ball outbound. They turned the ball over because they didn't know what to do. So we're breeding coaches. Does it look like we're breeding coaches just for the numbers? Or are we breeding great coaches?
No, we're not. We're just breeding trainers. But you take a lot to learn to be a good coach. And also, if you look at basketball, professional basketball, not just wheelchair, but professional basketball, they have time to train. If you have a full-time coach, they should be training for the 3 second, the 1 second option, the 2 second option,
the
0.6,
the 0.6 second. But to be fair, Ian, even when you look at these foreign coaches, they're training, all the time with these players, and they can't get that right. I don't know what they're doing, what they're taught, what they're trying to teach. So we're not teaching.
No.
Do you not think, going back to the days when it was yourself, Phil Craven was chair, Steve Spilker was in, and that, Brian Snowcroft, do you not think it was better then because they were people of the sport?
Yeah, the one thing, despite anything with that, there was the committee people were wanting to do things. A lot of the committee members before me and later on, even afterwards, all had passions for it. I can name half a dozen off the top of my head of committee members who went there to try and make a difference, to make the sport better. But they had a purpose and drive. I'm not so sure that those people that go there now have the same understanding of what the sport is, because they didn't come through the bad days. They didn't come through the roots. And like Tony Sainsbury, it's Phil Craven and Tony Sainsbury were the big powerhouses on the committee when I first started. But we had downside. We had player power. Our downside was player power. We were, because we were also club members and coaches, and many of us were GB or involved in some way. That did cause so we had our own type of problems. They just weren't what we have now.
Okay.
So let me get back to your career, Laker. I'm interested in your GB career, because did you play in World Championships, Paralympics, or?
I got I don't,
because I can't believe you didn't.
I made under 23 squad. I made an under 25 squad. I made the senior squad at Stoke Mandeville for the international games, and I was in Belgium with the GB squad, which I think was the Gold Cup. Is it the Gold Cup? It's called
1990.
But I didn't make an Olympics, because at that event there was a big fight between the players and the coach at that time. Well, two particular players. And I was still actually vice chairman on that. So I got asked my opinion of the situation as I was a witness, and I spoke my mind. And So I never really got a call back after that.
But you just spoke your mind. You just told the truth.
But having said that, the difference I feel is, and this is something that it took me years to come to terms with, is I stayed working through my entire time of playing. I don't, and as well as trying to fit as much training as possible. And I think that for that reason alone, I probably shouldn't have been really picked to go to Paralympics, because there was a lot of 2.5 pointers in the squad at that time, and a lot of them put more into it than they put their lives into it more than I did. That commitment I now understand. At the time, I probably resented it, and I blame the argument for years afterwards. But there's no doubt I wasn't as fit, or I had great stamina, but I never looked fit. Even though I came fourth sometimes, I was like fourth in the list sometimes of the training GB. I wasn't way down the list at all or anything like that for many aspects, but I still didn't do enough. And I think that was the difference. So I have to take that on the chin.
Yeah, but it's tricky, Ian, because I thought you had a great mind, and you're probably one of the greatest shooters that I've seen. Who could just, you didn't need space to get shooting. And I think at that time in GB, what's that? You're talking about 83, 84, 85. Yeah. They needed you. When they had the games at Stoke Mandeville in 1984, Ian Laker makes a difference in that team.
Well, I'd like to think that's true.
For sure it's true. At 84, Ian Laker, no matter how much you train, at 84, you make a difference to that team. They go from probably wherever they were, they could have got to the semi-final because they were lacking a quality shooter like you.
I mean, there was a lot of talk at the time. A lot of people spoke because we had the league going, and I was averaging 20 points a game and one of the top scorers. Nobody could understand why I wasn't in the squad. But, when you make your fall out with the coach that I fell out with, and there was no way back, really. And once you're out, I think.
It's kind of weird, the three of us are on here, because we've all had that similar experience where you fell out with the GB coach. And we were lucky to get back. Unfortunately, you weren't, but you probably should have.
Going back to what you said before about LGS's time in Euro Cup, and you mentioned the players like for the foreign teams, Eric Beno, Philip Baye, Lars Gunnar. Who was the best player you've seen in your time? Who was that one player you enjoyed watching?
Actually, I'm trying to remember his name, but there were quite a few. But there was a French 2-pointer, and I can't remember his name, but he had quite hairy shoulders, as I remember. But
I know he is Mouton.
Mouton, and he just had a quality of control I loved.
Philip Mouton.
Mouton, yeah, I remember him.
Yeah, but also I played against Dave Kiley and I played in Australia with young Troy Sachs when he was really young, before he became stuff like that. So I've met a lot of...
You was with our friend in Australia, weren't you, Jerry Hewson?
Yeah, Jerry played for Jets, came over and played for Jets too.
That's right, yeah.
Wasn't he
that was Nigel Smith and me, Martin McElhat and John Nordy.
Weren't he the first foreign player to play in England? I think he's the only one so far. Well, the first one. I remember Jerry coming. He was.
Oh no! We had an exchange program after that, because we sent Ian Harvey went over and played in Australia. Me and Steve Brown went and played in Australia, and we had Malcolm and Dewey come back. And one season with Jets, we was Hounslow. We were struggling against the Sparrows and teams like that. So I was able to import 2 Australians on November, just before the date, and they helped us win.
Wow.
We had a 4-pointer we brought in, Dewey, who's died now, unfortunately. Yeah, Mal Turnbull, who's a 1-pointer, and they just boosted. It was a cracking little 4-pointer with a great shot. Colin Brummage went over as well. He played over Australia.
Yeah,
had a little exchange program here for a while.
Yeah,
and also you know who's the other one? Oh no, the Australian single leg amputee was in the squad for a while.
Tim Maloney.
Tim Maloney played. Me and Tim Maloney played.
Yeah,
so
Tim.
We played together, yeah.
Think you're losing. I'm getting the names.
Come on, man.
I'm getting the names.
You just got one name, man. You just got one name. So, also, you became a great businessman. with your company. Why did you start that? What made you start that?
Well, that's a long story. It was started as a hobby.
Ah,
So
Really?
really? You started a big company as a hobby?
we started with three of us: Jamie, Jamie,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and Steve Brown and I. We in Hounslow. We were playing basketball. I'd come down. I was working for an air freight company, which I'd joined. So I went part time with them. And then me and Jamie did some part time work with the Spine Rift Association. And then we played games and sold chairs in the rest of the time. And during our time with Spine Rift Association, we were finding people who didn't know how to repair their chair, for one. Also, they were sold chairs by certainly corrupt companies who sold them any piece of rubbish, whether it fitted or not. And we were doing so. We started setting up, buying second-hand chairs, doing them up and selling them, or swapping them, or doing things like that. And then suddenly we said, "Oh, we're doing too much." We took on a unit in Hounslow, one of those. They did those incentive schemes sometimes for
Oh
people
yeah,
who.
the enterprise
Yeah,
scheme.
enterprise thing. Yeah, so we got a unit in just up on the A4, and got 2,000 square foot and moved into it. We moved into it, and we had no phone calls for like 3 months. We nearly died of no money and stuff like that. And then it just started growing and growing, and every year we doubled and trebled, and we went from like 80,000 in the first year and a half to 1.87 million at our height. So. And I would put it all down to work, luck, and also, actually, back to basketball and comparing GBL to basketball, knowledge. The one thing our industry of wheelchairs lacks is people actually really know how to repair chairs, maintain them, adjust them, set them up, and sell them, and give a service. And that's all GBL ever did.
Yep.
We gave service.
So when you're looking at these players nowadays, are you sit there and go, I probably could set them up better than what they are?
Actually, I have to say, though, don't you think Gary Gardner should get the credit? Pretty much, if Steve Spilker was still alive and as irate as he got about Gary Gardner's setup over the years, as many players did, I think even Simon Munn was pissed off with it because he was this midget, short ass, who sat in his chair, could nearly reach as tall as him.
Well, he wasn't sat; he was stood up in his chair.
Yeah, but they're pretty much all are stood up the time nowadays anyway.
Yeah.
Pretty much everybody sits.
Yeah, they sit inverted now.
Yeah.
They are.
So,
Look, actually, if you analyse a jump shot for a running game, you can see now that wheelchair users are sat in like the halfway motion of a jump shot.
Yeah. So talking about that, Laker, that comes to a big question here: the classification. And I know you know a lot about it. What do you think of it now? What you were there when it started,
Yeah,
and now it's gone on. Do you think there's time for a change? It needs updating.
absolutely. It needs revamping, absolutely, because they think they've got cleverer with it, but and it is a far more complicated because we have a lot more disabilities that are lesser known or not so much known or understood about nowadays. But the reality is that no system stays uncorrupted for long, and there are countries, without naming any particular countries, Turkey, where the classification is even though they have senior classifiers, they classify to the needs of the country, not to the needs of the sport.
Yeah.
So we've always had trade-offs, and there's always been people queried. I mean, JP's been queried. The stories of him riding a bike and should have been a 4, or was it a 3.5?
The stories about me riding a bike, Ian, I can honestly say right now are true.
Well, there was
Because what we're seeing, Ian, and I don't know if you're seeing it because you probably watch some games, is the power is almost phasing out.
low point of power, particularly.
Yeah. Because we've got people. I know the different limbs are missing, and yet they're becoming. Some of them are 2-pointers and 2.5s, but they've got full stomach muscles,
Full
core.
That just doesn't make no sense.
Well, that's where I think the classification is wrong because they're not understanding the physicality. So somebody, they can be missing lots of bits of fingers, hands, limbs and stuff like that. But their core, the structure that holds you in a chair is solid as a rock. So in contact, they have a dominance. They can be a one-pointer like that. against somebody who's a true paraplegic one-pointer, is always going to knock you down. It's a bit like, have you ever played wheelchair rugby? You know, the quad
Yeah.
rugby against the
Yeah.
quads. So, like, I played a bit. Like, they just used to bounce off me. As a solid 2.5 hitting me, I didn't fall over. I could just bounce, hit them, go, and turn and go with one movement. They can't do that. So that's the same. We've got that. But don't you think it's time that? I think we're almost there now, where there should be the international side and the club side, the women's classification. I do agree needs to be reduced, but and maybe there should be a standard where you could have a woman can be and junior can be a lower classifier until they played in X number of tournaments or games. Then they should lose that classification.
Yeah.
But Ian, we've been obviously in our shows, we've been saying these things, and the amount of emails coming back, oh no, that's not right. That's the because you had the first dominant women's team.
Yeah,
at the Titans, you had the first dominant women's team, and I think if there was a Euro Cup at that time, that your team will probably win it. I think it's time that the girls had their own kind of Euro Cup, because there's plenty of girls around the world, so they can play in a Euro Cup, because they're playing with a different ball. They're not even actually playing. If you watch the latest Euro Cups, they're not actually playing in the positions that they actually play for their country. So it's like they just look to me. And John, it just looks like they're just cannon fodder. They're on there because we can get 4 big guys on.
They can get four
not because they're great players.
There's an element about they have to fit a role. They have to be a good role player, that's for sure. And they have to have some ability to do some things. And part of me, I've always supported the women's game from day one, and our club as I say was a leading light in that. But as I say, it's about levels. I think I can see why women want to play there. And also, if they're being paid to play there, then it seems wrong to take that away from them. But they are definitely used as a role now. They're not playing like a realistic role they would do necessarily in their own game if it was women on women.
Yeah. So, if they were their normal points, Ian, do you think they would be playing at those clubs?
If they didn't have the deduction.
If they didn't have the deduction, or a smaller deduction, say it's half a point, do you think they would still be playing at those clubs?
I think if there was a smaller reduction, they still would be. Yeah, some of them still get court time. Genuinely, yes, definitely.
So,
but it's, and I think it should be based on, like let me propose a solution. An international woman shouldn't be getting the 1.5 point reduction in the national leagues, in their country's national league.
That's what we've suggested.
It should be maybe 1. They should lose, because that's by definition, if they've been up that level and made that level, to encourage women still to go there and women to start on their careers, they should still have the 1.5 that way, for that level sort of thing. But that's how I.
But I also think, Ian, that there shouldn't be any players below a 0. Even with you can get the reduction can only go to 0. It can't be minus. Because this is how the teams are getting away with it now. Like, if you look at a lot of the Turkish team, and not just the Turkish team, you look at the Euro Cup teams, they're playing a girl who's actually a 1, but now she's minus. So they add half a point or whatever, or plus 5.
There was a huge row about this, because we weren't supposed to use the minus word, and we weren't, and that's why they gave the point. That's why you had that complicated. Oh, it gets to 17 points or 18 points. That's how they did it. That was to make the women not seem to be derogatory, sort of women to be called minuses.
But that's what they use. Some teams are using it. The only team, like, obviously, we just had the Euro Cup, and we've seen Rosa Holloman. So she's a 4 or 4.5, and she's playing as a 3, and she was just fantastic. But she's the only one that I've seen in the game who's playing serious minutes, and she's in the game, playing the game. She's not just cannon fodder, as we say it, not just playing a role, just getting the way. Because we've heard, me and John, when we've been at Euro Cups, coaches telling the players, just get out of the way. Just get out of the way. Just cause havoc, that's all. You're never going to shoot the ball. Just get in the way. I just hate that.
Visibly see that. Absolutely, can visibly see that on the game, and the higher the level. Yeah, no, you can see it almost becomes 4-on-4. They're just mobile. without being rude, mobile screens going around hooking and grabbing and stopping and trying to create space for somebody else to. Yeah, no, it's not good. But there are quite a few other women. I've seen quite a few women in the various German and the Italian and Spanish leagues. There are a few women playing now but not many, not money, not higher pointers anyway, not the higher pointers.
No, because
so do you still follow the game?
Yeah, I follow the Italian league a bit, and I follow the Spanish league. I have done for years because Gaz went out there and Simon and all that. So I've stayed with them, and I watch the German league because Jim with Baden. So I support. I know the Landil coach, so I follow them. So I watch a lot of that.
So coming up to Paris 2024.
Mm-hmm.
Why are you jumping to Paris? I'm not finished. I was going to ask him another question before Paris.
Go for it.
You're always butting in. You're always butting in. Just wait, Ian. So, the question now is, loads of people say that the girls are uncoachable. You have coached the GB women's team. Tell me your thought process coaching them to coaching with men.
Wait a minute. Before he answers that, explain to him that question.
You explain to it. You just butted in.
We've been told, the delinquents have been told that the women's team now is nicknamed the Uncoachables because they all have an opinion. They all speak out in timeouts, which is visible from the footage that we upload. How would you...
That's a trope. That's because the coach has allowed that. That's just poor coaching, isn't it? They're not. No, the women are not uncoachable. No way. I think you have to be. You coach them differently to men. That I will have to say, and I learned that the hard way. There is a difference to coaching men to coaching women, but they're not uncoachable. No.
Why do you think an ex-GB woman player has never coached the national team? Because quite a few of them have gone into coaching.
Let me say that we've had very few GB men players even allowed to go into senior coaching, and yet the women have always been in this country looked at a lower level than the men's game anyway. It's always been looked at a much lower level. So if it's hard for a male player to get a coaching job, how hard must it be for a genuine, like Anne Wilde, who's regarded as one of the best person-to-person coaches in the women's game, and a load of girls and a load of male players have really enjoyed being coached by Anne Wilde. She couldn't get looked at. She couldn't get interviewed.
So,
she tried to get interviewed.
She did, yeah. She did a bit of work with the performance programs and the regionals and stuff like that, and was looking at some of the other jobs this is not for some years now, but this is years ago. But she got knocked back so many times, she just got disheartened, really. Wow. It was clear that nobody was going to take her seriously at that higher level.
Yeah, but the thing is, Ian, I think it's not good because we're hiring all these coaches. Like, if you think years ago, coaching was never paid, was it? Now it's all paid. We're getting all these coaches who I don't even think are qualified to coach at that level. When we've got great coaches here, you're talking about Anne Wilde, who's applied a lot. I've applied a lot for the women's coach's job, but then you just get to the stage, you go, why am I wasting my time?
I don't know if you when I coached the women's team for Kitty Kachu and then qualified them in 2001, and where the Hamburg tournament I coached, where I got our team got good praise for how good a team we were and everything like that. But when we got back and went for the job, and the interview and stuff like that, I ended up having been told I'd get the job, having also raised a lot of the money to help get the girls there in the first place as well. That it seemed logical as we'd done that well, sort of thing. And then I was told that basically the UK sport people didn't favour people coming out of the sport without full qualifications, like through universities and stuff like that. So Dan McCaffrey got offered it, and I was offered to co-coach with him, but my pride would let me down on that one, and I said no. Whether I should have done it, I don't know, but it just felt wrong. And I think UK sport, they will push for people who have qualifications they come through a recognised program, but the foreign ones they get away with because they're hiring foreign people, and foreign people don't have to have gone through our program.
But the thing is, Ian, we've always said this, what has university qualifications got to do with coaching wheelchair basketball? Because I look on the outside and these guys can't coach. And I'm being sick. These guys can't coach. They can't. You could see it. You know, like we're saying, the girls, when you watch the girls, because we watch a lot of games, they're talking more than the coach.
Yeah. But it's, I think you've got to understand, for me, as I understand it, is that it's like supporting, you've got to support, it's about supporting the universities that produce coaches and sports people. You've also got the government also with it, and using the charity lottery fund in the UK sport, also now can provide jobs for them. It can provide jobs for the therapists, the sports psychologists. You think how much is funded by the charity, the lotto funding through UK sport, and funded by that? It's all funding a whole load of other services provision that the government used to have to do, but doesn't need to anymore.
Yeah, but if you look at all other sports, a lot of athletes that used to be former athletes have gone on to be coaches in their sports. The only one you look at, because even rugby, so like I done an elite Paralympic coaching course 2 years. I done it with the guy who's the rugby coach, Paul Shaw. He's gone on to be the head coach, but yet wheelchair basketball, we've gone on this narrative to find college graduates who've got no qualification, you know, because they've gone through the college.
We've not picked up on what Ian said just before, first of all. The foreign coaches get away with it.
Yeah,
but
but
realistically, on the next job interview, you need to say you're Sinclair Thomas from
Barbados.
Put your accent on. Get it done, lads. Get it done.
Do you think there's not a subtle link though that as well that where our head office is at Loughborough University, which was a sporting centre?
Yeah,
I mean, I was actually going to Loughborough University, and they wouldn't take me when I did my A levels to go to university. They wouldn't take me because I was a wheelchair user, disabled, and they didn't have a program. They said I had to do a light degree and get a master's degree, then go back and do sports science, which is what I wanted to do. So I didn't want to do that. So I needed a car because I had one of those blue three-wheelers back then. So I needed a car. So I went to work, and they offered me training as an accountant instead. So I took that. So all bar for that decision, I would have probably been at university doing that anyway. But there's an irony. But there's a link between employing people that have qualifications. That is a policy, a government policy that comes direct from the people above our association.
So,
and then as our association employs people that have come through that process,
they continue that journey
in the same way.
But wouldn't you want to Wouldn't you want to hire the best person for the job, who knows the job,
but not the best certificate?
Not the best.
If you look at every government body, when they have a job interview, they have people that are trained to interview you, and they have an agenda. But those people aren't often people that do the job they're interviewing the people for, and that's why a lot of government bodies, unlike private industry, where you get fired if you're not very good at it, you end up with people doing a job that they are not capable of doing because they interviewed beautifully, but actually didn't know anything about the job that they were going to do.
Mm.
And that's where the reaction is. So who's doing the interviewing? Who in the association now is capable of interviewing somebody and making a judgment that they are a good coach?
Exactly. Well, that's what we want to know. And we also want to know who's the selecting committee.
Anybody for years. I don't think there's been anybody for years.
Well, it's like we found out there's no AGMs. So now if there's no AGM, how does the board ever change?
Well, that's the difference. Is so the company, it's set up like my business was. It's got articles of association, and it runs for that. So I didn't, as a major shareholder, I didn't have to have AGMs to talk to my other shareholders in GPL. We were allowed to negate them and not have them. We just chose when we wanted to have them. So you had complete control of the company that way. Mm-hmm. You know. Nobody to criticise.
As you said,
there's a way of doing it. There are ways of doing it.
As you said at the start, you're power crazy.
Well, AGMs were very much a waste of time for us anyway, because most of my shareholders were friends, so they knew what was going on anyway. and the association just was not getting much response, and that's where the power truly slipped. Is years ago, is that the people who are in the sport now don't actually realise we used to run our sport. So you're talking to people about. I mean, if you tell them that, like, if they see this interview, say, "Yeah, I was vice chairman. We used to run the sport. Used to do the league structure, the rules, all that. We ran everything, and there was like seven of us were players, and blah blah blah." They would probably look at you like you're mad, because that's not how they see it. They're now looked after by a group of able-bodied people who are paid to look after them and provide everything for them. They don't have to know that.
But they
Bring
don't.
back the rebound.
You know,
Bring back the rebound.
at the moment they're like a law unto themselves. It's like there's no rules. That's how we feel it. There's no rules.
Well, there's rules, but
There
not
are
the
rules, but they
applied
make
to
the
them.
rules. They make the rules, though.
And they dictate the rules to when they want it. They change it to when they want it.
Anyway,
Well,
can I go to
Yeah,
2024?
they can interpret the rules, and I say the way to protest it is almost impossible. Reading the Articles of Association, unless you get board members on board, unless you get that there should be a group of board members who are the policy setters, who are truly the ones who are, and they're part of the trustee setup. They're the ones who should be saying what is to happen. They're the policy setters, but they're not supposed to be detail. They're only supposed to. It'd be almost like the Prime Minister going, I want you to create a railway line from X, Y, Z, and other people go and do the job. That's what they essentially are.
Mm.
But there is a way to do it, because every member of the association is a single shareholder of this company, which is now the Basketball Association.
Except for
Not
you,
you,
John.
You're not, Johnny. You're not.
I've lost my vote.
You
Jesus.
just lost your one. Technically, though, you saved yourself £1, because in the Article Association, if it was ever folded, every member's supposed to pay £1 in to pay for the debts.
And I got a full refund. I was happy.
No, but as I say, I wouldn't. I don't know. You see, you can't do it. The other problem is, though, if you're not in it, that it was a clever move by them, because that now means that you're just a voice in the darkness, really. You don't even have a single vote or right to vote or say anything to them. So if you want to get something done, you've got to get, is it 25 or 50 people to put a motion forward to try and create something, I think it is. I was going to read up again before I had this chat.
Well, when let me know, because 25 to 50 people is not a problem. Looking at the email box, we're getting at the minute. 25 to 50 people is not a problem. I'd even say 200 people is not a problem at the minute.
So
it'd be good, but it would need you to have those people have a meet. You'd have to have a good statement of objectives and stuff like that to go to it. It has to be worded properly for it to be heard and done, and you have to. It's quite an involved process, is all I'll say at the moment. But I'll look into it and tell you what to do. But we may need more people and even maybe some legal advice, really. But you've got to decide what you're going after.
We have all that available.
What we going? Anyway, move on from that. I didn't go into
2024.
John,
yeah,
you can do 2024 now. Paris.
Yeah. Paris. How do you think the men and the women are going to fall in Paris? What's your hopes?
Well, I think that the men have got an awful lot of talent, just natural talent that will get them a long way. But as you know, it will always come to that crossover games, those crossovers. It's so the talent's there to get them all the way still, to the final still, I think. And then the final come down to maybe like how good those players are. But I mean, even in the last few finals where we have done well or brought medal games, you can still see a better coach could have made a difference. Proper coaching at the right time and moving your players and understanding your players' mentality when they need help.
Well, why are you just talking about the men? What do you think it's like being a GB man player? What do you think it's like being a GB male player right now, knowing you've not got a full-time senior coach?
Yeah. Well, to be honest, don't you think they're a little bit divorced from it all? Because they mostly play in Europe with coaches, and they seem to be involved in the coaching in the European sides anyway a bit. But they're sort of, I don't know, it's almost Yeah, it worries me. They worry me a lot.
Because we can't
there's a lot
see
of
we
hype
can't
on
see
them.
a pathway for the next generation to break in. If you
No,
think
no,
that the
no,
World Championships was last year and the Europeans, no one broke through after them. Not even at the training camp invitations.
no. I'm not surprised because there's nobody looking out for thing. They've got enough talent there right now to cope. Bearing in mind, without being rude to anybody particularly, but you're looking at maybe a 9-man squad, 9-person squad of talent that you can rotate, and then you're taking 3 others, aren't you?
Yeah.
There used to be always one spot for a rookie or a potential future, but right now they can get away with just having the Canadian guys coming in and just doing their bit pieces with the talent they've got available, because the talent that's available was used to each other. Do you know what I mean? They're almost like their own little. I'm trying to think what the thing is. They're good. They're talented. I say the
But
talent will take them through.
so
Women's, I'm not. The women, I don't think. I think the women. I don't think the women have got what it takes to go much further. I just don't.
Well,
I'd be surprised if they made a medal game.
both sets this time are automatically, because the formats changed at the Paralympics, 2 groups of
Yeah.
4, so they're all going to make the crossover no matter what.
Yeah. Oh, so they're doing the 1v4.
1v4, yeah.
so they're in
That's
two
Wow.
groups. They're in 2 groups. They're going to get to the quarterfinals. It's the quarterfinal matchup that matters.
So
Well, depending on where the girls, I reckon the girls could go out in the quarterfinal if they're not careful. That would be my view.
So you,
I've seen some other countries have come storming through that are giving them competition already that weren't our threats a few years ago.
so
yeah.
you've coached the girls, and so you've seen this group that's coming now because you say you watch some games.
Yeah.
What are they lacking? You think they're lacking leadership from, or I don't know.
Coaching. The coaching was awful. I mean, I hate to criticise coaching because I know it's a tough job, but that last one, the friendly tours, they don't know how to. They no press breaker. Nobody's taught them how to press break, and they're not that. A lot of the girls aren't that fit and fast. They need a great press breaker when you're not that fit or fast. And they didn't. Their options, offensive options, were just so limited, boring.
So Ian, here's a good question for you. 2024 Paris comes, and coach is sick. They give you a call. Would you do it?
No, I'd love to do it.
You got all that knowledge. You got all that knowledge, and everything there you told us is probably what they need. And I'm gonna. The opportunity is there. Would you just for that tournament, or a couple of weeks before, and just for that tournament? Because you've got so much knowledge that's wasted.
I would do it. I would do something because I've always wanted. The one thing I never did was actually I've been to Paralympics as a spectator. I've never been in a Paralympic squad as a coach or as a player. So I'd love to do that just for that on my thing. But I know without it would be a shit fight. You need to be in post and have a lot of time, and you need to train. You need to teach people what you want, and it takes time. You two know this.
Yeah,
you don't
for sure.
build a squad in 5 minutes, and even a good game coach isn't going to do a lot if the people you're talking to don't have a clue what you're actually trying. They need to do because they haven't been shown it ever.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
And that's
I
what
mean, it's a no-win situation.
Yeah, and that's what we feel like. The girls looking through, a year. It doesn't look like they've got any better. It doesn't look like they know exactly what their role is. They're doing things like, they're not passing the ball through the middle. They're trying to do that cross skip pass. None of them know how to pick and roll. It just seems like their fundamentals are just not there. But they've got a full-time coach.
I've got to say, that sounds awful, but it's almost lazy basketball, the offense. It's like we try and get a big person near enough to throw up something, and we do a bit of running around. But there's not many people. They got one. Normally, they only have one person who seems to be doing all the trying to pick properly.
So we've looked, when we're looking at the game of today, you're a dying breed. And John, you're a dying breed. You guards are a dying breed because it don't look like there's any guards who control the tempo of the game now. It's all the big guys that are controlling the tempo of the game.
Yeah, it's definitely gone that way, hasn't it, John?
it has. Yeah,
Yeah, but we've also got. To be honest, I don't know, John. I tried to sit up higher towards the end of my career, and I found it very uncomfortable. But now, if you were playing now, you'd be strapped in, sat up tall in those MIDI setups which has become the theme. And that made a big difference to the guard game, hasn't it?
It has, but I don't think I would have. I don't think I would have. I remember my dad said to me, if you don't change your sitting style and sit higher, you're going to be out the game soon. It's going bigger, quicker.
Well, the strapping and the chairs and the designs and the way you're strapped in and the shape and seat and how they build, it's made that game possible.
But I think, Ian, a lot of them that are sitting high shouldn't be sitting that high because they don't have no control of the chair. I sat high because I could control my chair, and that's where I knew I was comfortable at. I started low, but I was comfortable at where I was, that hybrid sort of position. Whereas I look at some of them now, they're in that position, and they're definitely not comfortable in that position.
My view on it was Van der Linden sat low. He was a 4 or 4.5. Mario Farasman. There was other 3-point guards that sat low. Paul Schulte. They never went high at things like that. So there was always space in the game to sit low. I don't think it'll ever go away. That it's just. I think it comes down to when you're a junior stroke getting onto the fringe of breaking into the senior team. The instruction or the leadership by one of your mentors that instructs you what role you need to look at, what you're going to play. I think that's missing, and that's why people are just going big.
Well, when I see the game with the setups, I agree with you because I think a lot of them are sat too tall. They're barely getting their wheel. They've got no core. Their core isn't good enough anyway. And they're losing momentum, they're losing power, they're losing push, but they still seem to crack. But it is the game. But I think that's also because we have a new disability level class now. We have this MIDI pointer class, which is got CPs and milder CPs and other disabilities that are minimal ones that are not like full. Do you know what I mean? That get that 2.5 to 3.5 classification. So that's and they suit the MIDI game, which is this MIDI setup. But it is. But I think the game's also physically more. I would call it fouling, really. I mean, if you in the old days you watch a game now, there'll be so many players fouled off because the contact level is absolutely immense.
Yeah,
is that because, Ian, they haven't been taught those skills? Because when I look at the game now, it's all about offense. There's no defensive strategy. You don't see great defensive teams trying to shut down. You just see it's a shootout at the OK Corral. Who scores the most wins the game.
Well, it does seem to be, and we do seem to have a prolific number of great scorers, though, in the high pointer categories, that's for sure. I mean, the score totals have gone up, haven't they? Tremendous in Europe, anyway. I wouldn't say in this country, but definitely in Europe. A lot of them don't use their chairs very well because, to be honest, you sat MIDI and high because that suited your physicality, your body shape, and your midriff and all that. That suited you. I think that you sitting low was I remember you playing low. It messed your game up because you couldn't really sit properly.
Yeah.
So, but these people are sat perched up as high as possible, divorced from the feel of their chair. So I think they are losing their defensive abilities for that reason.
For me, it took me a long time to get that position because if I went too high, I felt like you're saying divorced from the chair. Too low wasn't that good. It just took ages to get to that where I am now. Whereas now it looks like everybody's just saying, you know what, I'm going to play wheelchair basketball. I'm a 2.5 or 3. I'm just going to sit big. That's it.
I think Blakey should be looked at a bit more for what. I mean, Blakey used to sit low, shoot threes and guards and run around, sprint really fast. But he never became a good player till he went tall, high, and became one of the best defensive players I think this country had. He just focused on picking defensively. He worked his nuts off. Didn't care how many he scored or didn't score. He just did the job. He was. But
a warhorse.
But I think he changed the way the GB team was going because we could play a lot like a 2.5, which gave us more options.
Tony Woodard and Andy Blake of 2.5 that size playing that well with that amount of skill and ability, it changed the game tremendously.
And it allowed the guards to play, to have better guards on, stronger guards.
Yeah.
So, Ian, if you was playing in today's game, what would you think you'd average?
Well, I still, I don't think I could shoot anymore because my shoulders are gone. But
No, a prime Laker in today's game.
oh, I still no, I up to I remember Gaz coming back to training and stuff like that, and I got it. I was trained. I was still training. This is about only 6 or so years ago, and that was so I was still quite, I was heading for 60, but I could still shoot. And the people didn't know how to mark me as a guard from my era. And Johnny would have done. They just were sat back off me. But my shot was a range and accuracy, consistency from outside the key. They just didn't know how to do it. And then when they did come out, driving around them was easy. With sat low and mobile, I used to go around people. So So no, I still.
What about the new 3-point line then? Would you have reached?
I have never really truly become a 3-point shooter. I did hit a few, but they were more those last ditch things. But no, I was just inside the 3-point line. But I was comfortable just a few feet outside the key from any angle, from any distance, any side. And if they left me open, it was just okay, thank you. And especially the corners, any corner.
Did you miss the game?
I miss every time I watch it. I think I go. Every time I talk to somebody from basketball, I want to go back to it. It was my life. It was there for me through all troubles and great times in real life and friendships. No, basketball, I still love it today. Yeah,
So
that's why I watch it.
Well, before we go, how obsessed are you watching the Delinquent show every Friday?
Well, I pop through your I'm in and out of your podcast. Sometimes you go meandering off where I go, oh, I don't listen to that. So I do move it forward. But I think what you've done with the website and what you're doing and got people talking was so needed. And what's disappointing is the association has never taken on board how to make the most of their what we are as a, that's the reason we're not so popular in Paralympics and stuff like that, or not pushed forward onto television, is we just don't sound out enough about it. We don't have there's nobody doing enough work getting out. But we've got a few clubs doing it. Mohawks have got their videos and Revolution, but the association should have been getting stuff out there for miles. They should have been pushing the media side, because they just don't seem to have a proper media idea, do they?
No, but they pay for someone to do that. Like, this all came about just us chatting. We used to chat basketball on WhatsApp, and then it came about. But we offered our services to them, and they just poo-pooed us like we weren't nothing. And this is how it's just come out into the show, and we didn't, Ian, to be fair, realise how popular it was until.
Well, I think there's not enough on the current league and what's going on. There's not enough commentary. There's not enough discussion. I think more people in this would like to know what's going on, and people would love to see themselves being featured, wouldn't they? I remember when we tried to get stats going for the association. People loved it. We used to say who'd scored the most points in this league. Or this. I don't know if you remember that era of that. We only managed it for a while. We just didn't have the. It was because we were volunteers. We just didn't have the time. But the association could be doing so much more about the actual sport and making it interesting. And I think of loads of things they could do, really. But there we are.
For me, and they're just being bypassed by sports who've just started, like rugby league. They're on the TV a lot. The rugby who've won their gold medal, they're being promoted more. I think they're just being bypassed. They've taken it for granted that it's wheelchair, but they're taking it for granted, I believe. That's what I think.
I'd love to be fly on the wall and see how that's fallen apart like that, because how that's happened. I would love to. I'd love to do a time and motion study on what they actually do in the office, and I'm not being rude to them, but I really would like to analyse what they truly do that is about the sport and getting the sport out there. I just don't know.
Laker.
Right, I've got to go.
Right, Laker.
Mate.
Before you go,
My iPad.
Before you go, it has been absolutely amazing to have you on the show. Love it, love it, love it. We've got to get you back on to when we're doing an actual Delinquent show, so we're not just talking about basketball. But thanks for coming on. It's been absolutely amazing. Johnny, good job, lad. Good job.
Cheers, Ian.
Cheers, Ian.
Cheers, Johnny.
We will see you soon, mate.
Take care. Cheers.
Got drama, the saga continues. We ain't going nowhere. We ain't going nowhere. We can't be stopped now, 'cause it's bad boy for life.